0.875, right? Yeah. So now 0.875 alphas can buy you 1 beta. Okay? So which currency appreciated?
Beta.
Beta.
What? I made the same mistake last time. So
Yes. Yep. Okay. So you used to be able to buy, saying it backwards makes more sense. You used to be able to buy 0.8 alphas with a beta. Now you can buy more alphas with a beta. So the beta is better off. The beta appreciated, right? Do we all see how that works?
Before it was okay, but just a quick question. Even though I got the wrong answer because I just did it quickly, but it's okay if I took the fractions, I could multiply 5 by 8, 8 by 5, and then I multiply the top to make basically the same thing. So on the bottom it would be 40, on the top it was 32 to 35, which means in the beginning the 5
So you're 40. That's a much easier way of doing it. Right. So what you're doing is
and I still got the wrong number.
It takes intuition, right? So you're doing this. I'm sorry, 32.
No, I got no.
40, and now you get 35 40ths. So it used to take you used to be able to buy 40 betas with 32 of these. Now you have to buy, now you have to spend 35 to buy 40 betas. Okay? No. Good try that.
No, that was, you can't read the B.
You've seen my handwriting. I can read just about anything.
It looks like a fish, but it's really a B.
Okay, moving on. What are points in mortgages and why do consumers agree to pay them?
Now, the reason I want to say this is because I want to know if I'm right. Is it similar to down payment, and the reason that they agree to pay them is because it lowers their interest rate and it lowers their total cost?
I would definitely agree with the first two. I would say we don't necessarily have enough information to make the second one, because the third statement, because that depends on how long they keep the huge. Yeah.
But isn't it like most beneficial to keep it to maturity for if you pay with a point?
Yes, exactly. You get the most benefit if you put it at a point if you keep it till maturity. But then you're also keeping interest. You're also paying interest to maturity. You can if you pay it off early, then the remaining maturity, the remaining balance that you were due to amortize over the next, let's say, 15 years, you can pay that right away, and you don't have to pay interest on any of it.
So what was the example we used when we said that which one would be like the best option to choose, like to do the 2,000 points or
the 2 points? Yeah, we did an example where, and in fact, you'll get another opportunity to do an example like that on your homework. But yes, what we found in that exercise was that the effective annual rate goes up if we don't keep the mortgage to maturity when we pay points. When we pay no points, the effective annual rate is the same the whole time. So when we pay points, then that cost is today, and the benefit is spread out over 30 years. And if you sort of axe it in the 18th year, then you're foregoing the rest of that benefit. Okay. So yes. And I think I like Fabian's definition mainly. The one thing I would add to that, the way I would have answered this question is just to say a point is 1% of the value of the mortgage. So that's just another detail you guys may want to keep in mind. Again, I'm not super strict grading these. I won't take off if you don't say.
So if you accidentally drew a fish instead of a bee, would you actually count take off?
Enough with the fish, Fabian. That was a beta. You won't know it.
Wait, the fish was a beta?
I just said it's the money you pay up front to lower your interest rate.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Ismail, this belongs to you, sir. What you'll find is the first page is your homework that we will go over, the stocks homework. The second page is the next homework that... the second page is the next homework, and I'm sorry I forgot to print double-sided here. You guys have 4 pieces of paper. 2 of those pieces of paper are homeworks that relate to mortgages, and the next 2 are homeworks that relate to exchange rates. And we basically covered most of it, but...
Wait, there's 2 and 2. Fish is 2 each.
What's the one that we have left? And this is to replace one that.
Who's your dog?
Yeah, the two that's left.
Family.
I just have to do one more.
I mean, you can just do one more.
Hey guys, do me a favor and check the assignments you have in your hand, because you may have somebody else's as well. Go over them. Specifically, I'm missing 2 people. Did you get someone else's homework as well, Jim? Thank you.
Whoops.
So,
Yeah, what about growth?
Elizabeth,
There is no growth. It just says what about growth.
I like your feedback right here.
what's my feedback?
I don't know how to do this topic. You guys all this. You didn't say anything.
It's pretty bad. I gave one person got full credit for that problem, so I know who the outsider is.
Wait, when are these due again?
Those are due 2 weeks from today, okay? So May 3rd?
Is that the new one?
Yes. Who's missing the new one? Are you missing the new one?
See, you don't want me to do it.
I don't want you to succeed in this one. I'm teaching to everybody but you, Bubby. What's that?
Yeah, you got it.
So somebody has 2 now. Jackson, did I give you 2 by mistake? 2 new ones? I'll print another one if we don't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry guys, this was supposed to be a pretty easy thing for me.
I thought you had a bunch of homework. I thought.
Well, I'll do tomorrow.
I'll do tomorrow.
No. Okay, so we're clear. This is 2 homework assignments due 2 weeks from today. I will replace your lowest grade. I will drop your lowest grade. I will take the top 5 of these 6 collective homework assignments, okay?
So you don't have to do both of them.
You do not have to do both of them, but you will have to see questions that cover both material on the final, so I strongly encourage you to do both of them.
Do the next
Can
one.
we?
Oh, no,
pick
no,
which one
it's
we do,
stupid.
but
You can pick which one we use.
Okay.
When is it due? What's the actual date?
The actual date is May the 5th.
May 5th.
No, May the 3rd, May the 3rd, May the 3rd.
May the 3rd.
2 weeks from today, May the 3rd. Okay,
And he recommends that all of y'all do both.
now let's go over this homework assignment. Okay, you have 2 companies. One is a large publicly traded firm. The other is a small business. Who is going to choose commercial paper and who is going to choose bank loan? Okay, does anybody feel confident in their answer? Yes, Matt, help us.
The bigger company will choose the commercial paper.
The bigger company will choose the commercial paper. First of all, does anyone strongly disagree? Good. You guys are all smart. Second of all, why is it the case that the bigger company will choose the commercial paper?
There's the higher denominations that you have to acquire it for.
Yes, that's a very practical reason. Yes.
And then also the fact that you're tying up your capital and you're losing your opportunity costs as far as using it for something else. So you can do that with the bigger company.
Yes, everything you said is correct. If I gave you full credit on that, I meant it. But I think the more important reason why the bigger company would choose the commercial paper and the smaller company would choose a small business loan.
Liquidity.
What's
Has
that?
to do with it too. The fact when you get these commercial papers, do you stay with them for a certain period of time? Are they time dependent as far as
Commercial paper, remember, is all short term.
Yeah.
Money markets are all short term. So there's rollover risk because the way these are financed, if someone uses commercial paper, they'll get commercial paper for 3 months, and then every 3 months they'll keep rolling it over. So there's a chance that at some point someone's going to say, no, I won't roll it over. So there's more risk associated with that. But again, this is outside the sort of the main arena that I want to talk about. This discussion is very illustrative of what financial intermediaries do, okay? Financial intermediaries' sole or main purpose for existence is to reduce information asymmetry, okay? Information asymmetry has costs associated with it. If I don't know whether Ismail's a good borrower or not, I'm going to take the average of what I would charge a good borrower and a bad borrower, and I would charge that to him if I think that there's a 50% chance he's a good borrower and a 50% chance he's a bad borrower. Okay? So if, on the other hand, I knew that Ismail was a good borrower, he would pay much less. And that doesn't just work with good borrowers and bad borrowers. That works because there's information asymmetry with any borrower. So the commercial paper market doesn't know what rate to charge a small business. It has no information about that small business. To be able to evaluate whether that small business is creditworthy or not, what you need to do is look into their past 3 years of financial statements, look at their business plan, do a lot of individual credit analysis, meet with the owner. Commercial paper is traded at large. Nobody has time for that. So what happens is, if a small business wants to get commercial paper, the rate that the commercial paper market is going to charge it is going to be astronomically high because they don't have time to do the credit analysis. In contrast, a bank specializes in this kind of credit analysis. They'll be able to discern the good borrowers from the bad borrowers, and they'll be able to reduce information asymmetry costs. But there's a flip side to this. The information asymmetry cost reduction that financial intermediaries supply comes at a cost itself. That cost is regulatory costs, specifically, right? So banks have to be subject to deposit requirements, rate requirements, examinations, compliance requirements, okay? This is going to translate into them having more staff, having to pay a lot more people, not being able to charge the rates that the market demands. And those costs, the bank is foregoing some profit, and in other cases, incurring some costs. That's going to be translated to the borrower, okay? That's going to be factored in, and the rates that the borrower ultimately has to pay is going to be bumped up to compensate the bank for these regulatory costs, okay? So only borrowers whose information asymmetry costs are sufficiently high that the reduction of those costs would be greater than the amount that they have to pay banks for incurring regulatory costs. Only those borrowers whose information asymmetry costs are so high that the benefit to them by banks doing the credit analysis and reducing those costs outweighs the detriment to them from having to pay for the bank's regulatory costs are going to go through and get a bank loan. It's easy to see if we look at a large public company. A large public company makes all its statements public, right? Files them with the SEC. It has press releases. Any material event that goes on in that company's life, they have to file a 8K, so they have to file press releases. There's a whole lot of information flowing between the company and the investor. So these information asymmetry costs for large public companies are low. There's not a lot of information asymmetry between the investor or the ultimate owner of that company or financier of that company and the management, right? There's pretty relatively symmetric information, especially relative to a small business. So for them, it would not be worth it to incur these regulatory costs, have these guys priced into the price of their loan, if they're not getting a lot of reduction in information asymmetry. This was a whole lot. I was trying to think of a really easy way to explain it, but it all comes back to everything that finance comes back to is costs and benefits. So for large company, the reduction in information asymmetry costs is negligible. The regulatory costs are the same for these guys as they are for the small companies. For the small company, there's significant benefit for them to be gained by using a bank, because there's a lot of information asymmetry between a small business and the person financing the small business, in this case the bank. So high. So for these guys, it makes sense to use bank loan. For these guys, it does not. Did anyone really not follow that? Super not follow that? Does anyone want me to try to explain it one more time? The book actually does a really good job of explaining this. when we get into money markets. So if you want a better understanding and more concise words, I would refer you to the section in the book about money markets. I know a lot of you guys probably don't have books. Please come and see me. I'd be happy to make copies of pages, or you guys can borrow my book. Okay, so this is an important question to understand because this question gets at why do financial intermediaries exist? What benefits are associated with financial intermediation and what costs? Okay, this is something important, something that I want you guys to take out of this class.
Is there a secondary market for commercial paper?
Yes, there's a large secondary.
Or like for large companies to trade from one another?
Yes. Yep. But I mean, the company that financed via commercial paper doesn't care who's trading it after they finance it.
So a company could say, I'm going to borrow this much from that bank, and then another company that's not doing so well, as far as financing, could buy it from this other company and pay them a premium.
You said bank. Did you mean commercial paper in the first place?
Yeah, commercial
okay.
paper.
So, no. So remember, when you're buying commercial paper, look, this is paper. Look,
Yeah.
who do you want the company to be, me or you?
You can be the company.
I'm the company, all right? So I'm issuing you a piece of paper. This is called the commercial paper that says, I owe you money. After I issue you that piece of paper, there's nothing I can trade. I don't have a tradable asset. I have a liability. I owe somebody money. You can trade this with Mario. You can say, hey, I don't want to actually get money from Leo. Mario, I'll sell this paper to you. You can get money from Leo. So it would be you guys doing the trading, not me.
The banks.
The investors in commercial paper. So you can think of them as banks. They're financing the company. Okay. Yes?
So on that first question, you're just saying that information asymmetry for a bank, it would cost, it's not worth them incurring the cost that borrowing the money from the commercial paper is worth the cost to them, so they would neglect that and take a bank loan because then their cost would be less, right?
I'm going to try to rephrase what I thought you said, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, okay? So the large company doesn't have a lot of information asymmetry.
Right.
So for them, the benefit in information asymmetry cost reduction associated with bank loan financing is small relative to the regulatory costs that they're going to have to pay that are priced into their loan. It's the same regulatory cost that's priced into the small guy's loan, by the way. But the benefit is smaller than the cost. In the case of small business lending, their benefit of information asymmetry reduction is significantly greater because the commercial paper market, as Ismail was pointing out, chances are they don't even want to touch them. They say, look, we have lots of 1 million or more, so that we don't have to deal with small guys like you. Okay, but let's assume that they could get commercial paper financing. Then the commercial paper market, without having any sort of information about who this small business is, what its business plan is, all that credit analysis stuff, would say, look, if you guys want to borrow money from us, fine, but we'll charge you 25%. Take it or leave it. We don't care. We don't need a $25,000.
And that's because their risk is higher because they don't have the information necessary, like a big corporation that must spit out financials.
Exactly. It's not even necessarily that the risk is higher. It's just that the uncertainty about their risk is higher. This light situation is going to get really bad when it gets dark outside. Here you guys go. This is okay. So I'll put that one. Okay. Next question we get: what is the price of an asset? Okay, this is like something that is indoctrinated in me. This is something that every finance student should be able to recite like the Bible. Get out of here. The price of and the fair price of any asset is the net present value of expected future benefits. Okay, you can use some subset of those words and get the right answer. Expected future, if you say net present value, implies that you're discounting it already, so your expectations are factored in. But the point is how much benefit you expect to receive from this asset factored into that. I said that sentence backwards. You have to factor in your expected benefits, and you have to discount them by when you're going to receive those benefits. Okay? And that is what you'll be willing to pay today for whatever asset. So an asset can be thought of as a stream of future benefits. Some assets like bonds have exact future benefits. Some assets like stocks have approximate future benefits. Some assets like the CDOs, the Z tranches of the CDOs, have really uncertain future benefits. The rate you're going to discount those at is really high, but you'd still do the same analysis as you draw a timeline and say, all right, for these CDOs, let's say, I know for sure I'm not getting paid before year 5, but around year 6, my best guess is I'm going to get $1 million. Around year 8, I'm going to get $8 million or something like that, right? You'd plot those future benefits and you discount them based on how risky they are. For instance, right? It's just examples. So the fair value of any financial asset is the net present value of its expected future benefits. We're pretty clear on that? That's kind of a big. Okay, now we get into valuing stocks. So as a caveat, these are very rudimentary models that nobody uses, but you'll find them in every stock textbook. So if you're going to value a stock, you have to at least understand this. And so this first scenario, we have a steady dividend that you can receive every quarter forever. Okay? So the price that you're willing to pay today is going to be the net present value of your expected future cash flows. If you have the exact same cash flow in perpetuity, mathematically that's a very easy thing to figure out. You get that cash flow divided by your discount rate. We went over this in chapter 3 when we talked about perpetuities. I'm almost positive I hit upon this when we talked about stocks, but if I didn't, there was another way to back into it. And so what we call this cash flow here is just a dividend. So you do dividend divided by discount rate. Okay? I'm going to take a brief sidestep here and say that for part A and part B of this problem, you could have done it one of two ways, the right way or the wrong way. Both of them gave you the right answer. That's confusing, but we'll see what happens in the end, okay? So, by the way, the other way you could have done this is to use the the Gordon growth model, where it's R minus G, and if you're getting the same dividend payment forever, then your growth is obviously 0. Does that make sense? Okay, so.
Is that the wrong way?
At this point, this you can interpret this as the right way or the wrong way. So the right way is taking $2 and discounting it by what? 0.025, Ruben. Why is that?
Because it's rate of return of 10% divided by quarter.
Yes. Yes. Well, we got the right answer. That's a good rule of thumb, Jay. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You do well. And so, what?
I don't know.
Okay? This is the right way of doing it. The wrong way of doing it is to take the annual amount, the annual dividend, and divide it by the annual discount rate. Both of these two calculations will give you $80. You couldn't have lost credit on that if you did one of these two ways. We'll see where you will lose credit, okay? The next step is basically just as easy, except we're not restricting this G to be 0 now. Now we're saying that the G is $2 annually or 0.5% each quarter, okay? Again, you could do it the wrong way.
What necessarily makes it wrong?
You'll see in the next problem.
Okay.
And what makes it wrong fundamentally and theoretically is because this model should be applied considering the frequency of discounting. For instance, if you were to do the following, right? Instead of these cash flows are taking place quarterly, so it's important to discount them quarterly. The same reason we have to divide bond rates by half, or by 2, because the cash flows take place semi-annually, so you have to discount them semi-annually. You'll have a problem in your homework where I give you some funky timing. I think it's every 43 days you get cash flow. So you have to discount that. But we could also do this, let's say, how much will we make every 2 years? Well, we'll make $16 every 2 years, and we just multiply it by 0.2. And that'll also give you the same result of 80 bucks. But avoiding that for the time being, these two calculations both give you $100, which is how much this Gordon growth model says you would pay for the stock. So now we get to the part that you can get tripped up on. So the question is, when you sell this stock in a year, what would the price be that you sell it? Okay? Here, it's important to take into account what the dividend payment is going to be. We're operating under this second regime where the dividends are growing at a rate of 2% a year or 0.5% every quarter. Okay? So your first dividend payment, you're going to receive it at the end of the first quarter, so DQ1 here is going to be $2. That was given. Next one, DQ2, was how much? You don't have to give me a number, but how would I calculate it? Why 1.02?
Because it's 2% of the following year is going to be 2% more than the previous year.
You're right, but what about the following quarter?
Oh, I just skipped it to the year. Never mind.
That's why that would give you the wrong answer. We'll see how that plays out. But so what you do here is 2 times 1.005. Every quarter, this number is going to be 5% higher than it was the prior quarter. Okay? DQ3 equals 2 times this value squared. DQ4, your last cash flow is going to be this times, or $2 times that value cubed. So the end of the first quarter you get $2, the end of the second quarter you get this, that, and the other, right? That makes sense. But when you're doing the Gordon growth model or the perpetuity model, it's always important to keep in mind that the price today will be the discounted cash flow that you get in the next period. So if we're selling it at the end of Q4, we're selling it 1 year from today, investors care about the dividend they'll get at Q5, which can be derived with this exact same calculation. So, to sum it up, the price at quarter 4 equals 2.1005 to the 4th, which is dividend at quarter 5, whatever, discounted by the same formula, 0.025 minus 0.005, or 0.02. Okay? Now, if you were to do it annually, you would just take $2, so times 1.1, and that would give you would mistakenly think that that would give you the dividend that you'll get at Q5. And you'll get a completely different number.
Why is that 1.01?
1.1. I'm sorry. No, yeah, 1.02. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Thank you.
I did that, I got 2.04. And
What is it? 1 point what?
2.04 now.
02?
Yeah, 1.02. But don't listen to this. This is bad. This is the wrong way. This will get you the wrong answer. That will get you the right answer. You need to discount or compound the interest in this case, or
the difference is like a fraction of a cent, right?
Yes, the difference is a fraction of a cent, but when we're dealing with a long period of time, it's going to be a significant difference. When we're dealing with a lot of money, it's going to be a significant difference. So divergence on 2 dimensions will get you a big
So
difference.
don't ever do it that way, just go.
Yes. More importantly, this is what makes sense fundamentally and theoretically. This is a shortcut that can get you approximately the same number, but it doesn't make sense theoretically what you're doing this way. Here, you're getting payments every quarter, so you're compounding interest every quarter.
Can you explain why we need the fifth quarter?
Yes, that's a good question here. Okay, so your price today that we figured out here is the payment that you're getting at the end of the first quarter, discounted by R minus G here. Okay, so the payment that you're getting at the end, your payment you're getting next quarter, right? So If I were to sell it here, if I were to sell it at the end of Q1, I would take this payment. If I sell it at the end of Q2, I take this payment. If I sell it at the end of Q3, I take this payment, but I'm actually selling it at the end of Q4. So I take the next period's payment, the dividend in Q5.
And you add that to the selling price.
No, we're not talking about the selling price. But we'll on the next question, we'll get to the selling price. No, we won't. No, on the next, well, it'll be something different. Well, we'll get to the selling price, but it won't be the fifth quarter's dividend. So, okay, let me read it formulaically first. Just, I see your question.
I was saying that the fifth one, it's essentially your opportunity cost that you're giving up. They're paying you for that opportunity cost, the cost the revenue you would have gotten.
And that says
That's what they're paying
DQ4 again up there.
The dividend, I'm sorry,
Up
where
right
you
there.
Oh, there's pretty. Price at Q4?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the price, so P means price, D means dividend. So the price at quarter 4, let me write this out formally here. Price at quarter 4 equals the dividend at quarter 5 divided by R minus G. Okay? That's how we get here. This is the same formula, you'll note, as the price at quarter 0, or the price today, equals dividend at Q1 divided by R minus G. Denominator stays the same, but the value is going to be different. So this is if we're pricing it today. This is if we're selling a year from now. Jackson, does this make sense? Not so much?
I kind of get it.
Okay. Just the bottom line is, if you're pricing an asset at any point using this formula, you need to take the next period's cash flow.
Just by rule.
That's the way this formula works. That's what the math gods told us on how to price a perpetuity.
That's when you know when to do it when it says P0, right? So that's
Price at time 0 is the dividend at time 1.
So like if it said like price, like for example, like you said like price at Q4, then so you would always go up 1.
Yes, exactly. You always increment by 1. It's always the dividend at Q5. And if we were talking about quarters, we were talking about years. If I sell this in 7 years, and this is a company that pays dividends annually, then I do the expected dividend at year 8.
Okay.
Okay? I saw a lot of hands here. Who were my hands? Is one of the hands I get out of the way?
Yeah.
Taylor, do you have a hand?
Oh, it's just.
Oh, that was the opportunity cost comment. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure that I understand how to interpret it that way, but if that helps you, by all means, go for it.
It's just because that's what you're giving up for the next quarter, therefore that's what you would take in because.
Yeah. So, but you're also giving up the next dividend and the next
Yeah.
dividend and the next. Yeah, you're giving up all. Yeah. But this is just the price of a perpetuity. Okay. So this is why the right way is better than the wrong way. And Fabian did the wrong way and got an answer that was close. That can happen. That will happen.
Oh, I did the wrong? Oh, I mean, yeah, you forgot to grade my homework.
Oh no, I thought I thought you said you did.
I did it.
One
What are
way
you talking about?
Oh, okay.
It's right here.
Oh, all right. Okay, and the last question is sort of a. This time of question is going to reward the people who can put a lot of things together instead of operating within a chapter, or operating within a topic. So this question relates us back to something we talked about at the very beginning and all throughout, and what is the value of a financial asset? Well, it can be easily described as the net present value of all expected future cash flows. So in this scenario, there is no uncertainty, there is no expectations involved. So the price at time 0 there goes my idea. The price at time 0 equals your dividend at time 1, dividend at time 2, dividend at time 3. Jackson, this is where we're getting into this here. Dividend at time 4 plus the sales price. All of these discounted by 1 plus R. 1 plus R squared. 1 plus R cubed. 1 plus R to the 4th. This was not necessarily a formula that I gave you in the stock unit. But if you'll recall from the bond unit, or if you'll recall that summary statement at the beginning of your homework that the net present value of any asset is, the value of any asset, the price of any asset is the net present value of expected future cash flows.
What does SP stand for?
Sales price. Okay? So, it's about to get really hard to see, huh? I have black. Black might be easier. Easier to see. Okay, I'll go with black now. Do you guys want me to rewrite this, or can you see this? Okay. So, okay. So, does it make sense why we're doing this? How much would you pay for the asset? It's not going to be what this Gordon growth formula says the price is worth, because that's not what you're getting when you sell it. When we did the calculation from the third part of this question, we'd get something like $103 or something like that. I don't know. Those of you who did the calculation probably have it.
102.02.
That works. But in this case, you're not going to get that 102 as a sales price. That would be the fair price to sell it for. But today, you agreed to sell it for $22. So you're only going to get 22 bucks here. You're going to get 2 times 1.005 cubed on this one. Jackson, do you see why here we're doing?
This one makes a lot of sense.
Okay, perfect. Good. Okay, the other one I'd be happy to explain to you in more detail. Okay, and you do this same thing with all the other ones. And again, this denominator part, this wasn't in a stock-related formula, but knowing how financial assets operate, you would understand that when you're discounting, you discount by 1 plus R to whatever period you're discounting. This is what your calculator does when you type in the 5 NPV buttons. So, are we relatively clear on how this question works? Try to do a full court press on.
So that's what's in the bottom? What was the rate?
Good question, Crystal. What's the rate?
I don't know.
What's that?
I forget. Oh, 0.025?
0.025. Are you sure it's 0.025 and not 0.1?
Oh, yeah.
Which is it?
I don't know.
You had it right the first time. But it's 0.025 and not 0.1 because these are getting discounted quarterly. Okay? 10% is the annual rate. 2.5% is what happens when you divide the annual rate by the number of periods.
Dividend is still $2.
What's that?
The dividend is still $2.
No, it's not. The dividend on this day was $2. The dividend on the last day is $2, but you have to compound the growth into it. So it's 1.005 cubed. Because this one's 1.005 squared, because this one is 1.005.
So that should be D1 times 1.005.
That's exactly what it is. This should be D1 times 1.005. The first dividend was given in the problem as $2. Right? And then, so to get the next dividend, $2 that grows at 2% annually, but it's only going to grow, the $2 base is only going to grow for a quarter, so it's 2 times 1.005. For the sake of completeness, if I wrote anything else, I might as well.
The next one's going to be
that. Because now, at first, it was this $2 that compounds, but now there's going to be a new sum that compounds. This $2 times 1.005 that compounds. So that's why you have to compound this sum by 1.005. And that'll give you 2 times 1.005 squared. And here, sort of your base is $2. Here your base is $2 times 1.005.
That last one, 1.0.
Here your base is $2 times 1.005 squared. Because that's how much you had in this third period. So in this third period, you're taking this sum that you had and you're compounding it again by the growth rate, quarterly growth.
So on the second dividend, it should have been $2.01.
I don't know what the numbers. The numbers, in fact, if you guys want to leave it in this formula, it would be easier for me to grade, and it just makes more sense. I don't care about the actual numbers because that's just one extra typo that you can make. But this is how the numbers work. This will show me that you
Well, that's what I'm saying. But then the next one, you would go $2.01 times just the 1.005, not
Yes.
squared, right? You're just
Yes, yes, that's exactly what this is. This is the base of $2.01
Okay.
times 1.005, and that gets you this dividend. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you're just representing on the third dividend at 2.
Yes,
because
you're squaring.
Formula with, okay.
Is there an easier way to go through that than having to add each one of those in order to get the actual purchase price?
Yeah.
Cash flow thing, technically.
No, actually no. The cash flow thing on your calculator makes sense at first glance. Some of you went through it, but what the cash flow thing on your calculator assumes is that all payments are equal. You cannot program, as far as I know, you cannot program a growth rate. And here what we find is all payments are not equal. Okay.
Couldn't you just change your payments? Couldn't you just do 2 times 0 and actually change your payments yourself?
Yes, there is a way to do that, but you'd have to input 4 different payments in the calculator. And so I argue if you're going to do that, it's easier or harder to do this. There is a way to do that.
So it's easier to just do one by one by one. And
I won't give you a problem where you have to do 12 of these calculations. I think this is probably as long as I would go. This test your, and even this takes you probably 3 minutes to do. Okay, ready to move on? Cool. Oh, the last thing, really easy, difference between NYSE and NASDAQ. NYSE is basically an exchange. It's investors interacting with investors. NASDAQ is an over-the-counter market. It's investors interacting with, dealers. So, pretty simple. That clock's wrong. The time is 7:30. I have you guys for another hour, except for Taylor, who I had for another half. So gotta make it count. Okay, so with this extra half hour, I want to finish up exchange rates. What's that? Doing your homework? Okay. So I want to introduce a topic called the real exchange rate. We were dealing with exchange rates when it comes down to dollars and euros and currencies, right? But you can think of the real exchange rate as the exchange rate of one good for another good, okay? Let's consider the following example. BMW in the United States costs $50K. All you car people can confirm or deny this estimate. But BMW in EU costs 30 euro. €30,000, okay? The exchange rate of dollar to euro, let's say, is $4 for every 3 euros, or 1.33, which is pretty accurate. Pardon? Yeah, but by how much are we getting hooked? How do you figure that out? No, this is just the exchange rate. It could very well be that the U.S. is getting, if this was, let's say, 45, then even though this number is bigger than that number, the U.S. is getting a better deal. So how you figure this out is you have to convert it, okay? You guys choose. We can either convert dollars to euros or euros to dollars. We just have to be careful on what we're doing. Euros to dollars, okay? So we take this, and we have 30,000 euros times, what's going to have to be on our numerator? Or just give me a symbol. Euro or dollar? Dollar. Does anybody disagree? So I'm just going to write this out, as I'll have a chance to assess it. Okay? So if we want the final term to be in dollars, we need this euro to cancel out with that euro. Okay? So we'll need $4 for 3 euros, and that gives us $40,000. So the price of a BMW, if I were to buy it in Europe, is $40,000. I couldn't buy it in dollars. I'd have to change my dollars out to euros, but this is the price that I'm effectively paying. Whereas the price of a BMW, if I were to buy it in the States, is $50,000. So the real exchange rate equals real exchange rate for US to EU is 50,000 divided by 4,000, or 5 divided by 4, or 1.25. Okay? So the real exchange rate in this particular commodity, a BMW. You guys choose which model. Okay, so do real exchange rates make sense? And here we can see which currency is cheaper. Okay? So just without me explaining it to you at all, which currency sounds like it would be cheaper? Euro. Why does the euro sound cheaper?
Because you can buy with $40,000 a BMW that would cost $50,000 American.
Yes, but I have to analyze that statement because my instinct is that you get it wrong.
Yes, but no.
Yes, that's the correct answer.
That's what I just said.
You said the opposite.
I said you can buy a BMW for $40,000.
No, never mind. That's not the answer.
Which isn't the answer.
Okay, neither are the answers because you're right. That is what you said. Okay, so the euro is cheaper because you can buy the dollar is cheaper because you can buy less with the dollar. Did that make sense? Okay, so my dollar won't take me as far, so my dollar is cheaper.
Technically,
So
it's the same commodity.
You can buy more with the euro.
I can buy more with the euro, yes. So the euro is more expensive. The euro is a more expensive currency. It has more value. Okay, I messed that one up, but did it make sense at the end of the day? So the euro has more value, so we say it's more expensive or more valuable. The dollar has less value, so we say it's cheaper. Okay, sorry to pick on you, but okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the real exchange rate specific to BMWs?
The real exchange rate or Mercedes. No, I'm just kidding. Any particular commodity, right? So a real exchange rate we can only think of in terms of a particular commodity. Yeah. Okay.
Quick on that.
Gotta be quick on this game. Now let us discuss the purchasing power parity. PPP. Big concept in economics. Purchasing power parity. You guys have taken an international economics class. Chances are either A, you've heard the word, or B, your professor needs to be fired. Okay. And this is a concept that basically says, in the long run, there should be no arbitrage opportunities by buying in one country and selling in another country.
For the same gift.
For the exact same commodity.
Gift basket.
Yes, and in fact, I'm glad you brought up baskets. Let's think in terms of baskets of goods, okay? So, let's say that a year ago, you can buy a basket of goods in the US for $50. And you could buy that exact same basket of goods in Russia for 500 rubles. I don't know what the symbol for rubles is. Okay? And everything was fairly priced, which means the exchange rate for US dollars to rubles was, before you answer, think carefully, the exchange rate of US dollars to rubles is 1/50? Do I hear any dissonance? What? 1/10, yeah.
Okay.
1 US dollar for 10 Russian rubles.
Not 1/50.
What's that?
That was the wrong answer.
Yes, that
Okay.
was.
Matt is slipping.
Yeah, that's like, that's like. So, the exchange rate for US to Russian rubles, we'll just say RU, equals 1 to 10. Okay, the exchange rate of Russian rubles to US dollars equals 10 to 1, or just 10. Or just, okay, that's just beside the point. Okay, now let's get into the purchasing power parity stuff. Let's consider the following scenario. That US just recovering from recession and has inflation rate of 0. Russia doing something funky and has an inflation rate of 5%. Okay? Rational Russians, if there can be such a populace, are afraid that their currency is going to keep devaluing because of inflation. So they will give consumers two options. They will say, hi consumers, you can either buy our, and so this is over the last year, so now, let's see, this was t equals -1, and this is at t equals 0. So this is today. So now, because of the inflation, you can buy a basket of goods in the US for $50, but you'd have to pay 525 rubles to get that same basket of goods because of the inflation. Okay? And Russians are concerned that the inflation will persist. So they will give consumers two options. They can say, look guys, you can buy our basket of goods in Russia either for 525 rubles or for 50 US dollars. You can pay us in USD. What purchasing power parity says is that in this, what's that? In this new regime, the exchange rate is going to have to adjust to reflect what the true purchasing power is in both economies. So, the exchange rate from rubles to dollars was at time equals -1. Started out as 10 to 1. And now it's going to be at time equals 0. It's going to be 525 to 50, which equals 10.5 to 1. You guys can do the math. Okay? So this exchange rate is going to adjust to this new number to reflect the difference in purchasing power between these two economies. That condition is called purchasing power parity. Great term if you're writing Shel Silverstein poems. It's very literal.
What's the advantage then for the Russian seller is to accept $50 American?
So that removes the advantage, right? So this, you'll have to understand that this takes place in an equilibrium sort of dynamic. So this will change over time. If the Russian seller today says, this is the new game that we're playing, then over time, exchange rates will adjust toward this. It won't be instantaneous. It will adjust towards this because what's going to happen is a bunch of arbitrageurs are going to take out a bunch of USD, buy up a bunch of Russian basket of goods, and the Russian people, because the basket of goods is in hotter demand, can bump up the prices a little bit. And when they bump up the prices, the exchange rate moves toward this. And we'll go over this full set of ways that you can affect an exchange rate, I think, next.
Can you explain that what that stuff is down at the bottom? T equals -1?
Yes. So T equals -1 is what happened under this regime. So you could buy a basket of goods for $50 in the US or 500 rubles in Russia. You had no incentive to go shop in Russia to get this same basket of goods, and Russians had no incentive to go to the US to buy their basket of goods because the exchange rate was 10 to 1, just like what it should be. Okay? Now, over the last year, Russians have seen 5% inflation rate, which now means that today you can buy that same basket of goods in Russia for $525, whereas US has seen no inflation, so it's still 50. You following, Sam?
Mm-hmm.
See, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So, what's happening with the exchange rate of rubles to dollars? It started out as 10 to 1, but under this new regime, what's going to happen is the exchange rate is going to deviate toward a new equilibrium. It's no longer going to be 10 to 1, but it's going to slowly start converging to 10.5 to 1, which is what 525 over 50 boils down to. Because we want these values to be able to buy you the same amount of goods. Okay? And it doesn't make sense that you can buy, if the exchange rates were to stay under the old system, you could buy more goods in Russia with the same amount of money, same amount of USD than you could buy in the States. So no one's going to be buying these goods in the States. Everyone's going to be buying in Russia. US prices is going to go down. Russian prices are going to go up until we hit this new equilibrium.
So T equals -1 is just representation of T equals -1.
A year ago. Yeah, T always means time. So 1 period ago, minus
So
1 period.
we're
is 0.
comparing last year to this year.
Exactly. This is T equals 0 today. Okay. Purchasing power parity. Yeah. We have yet another example that's very related. Talks about the law of one price. And the law of one price is just basically another way of talking about purchasing power parity, but these are words that come up in economics, so I might as well teach them.
So that was considered the law of parity?
That is called purchasing power parity, or the theory of purchasing power parity. So, law of one price goes as follows. Let's say we have an opportunity to buy bananas in Guatemala or Jamaica. Okay? So, in Guatemala, we can buy 100 bananas, noted as B, for 200 quetzales. Just say that, okay? In Jamaica, we can buy the same quantity of bananas for 100 Jamaican dollars. So, we'll call these Guatemalan quetzales, GQ and JD. Okay? Think of them as alphas and betas, whatever you want to call it, A's and D's. So, this is how much the same unit of the same commodity costs in the respective countries. The law of one price says that the exchange rate between Guatemalan quetzales and Jamaican dollars has to equal 2 to 1, or 2. Okay? Now, what would happen if the exchange rate, so this is the theoretical exchange rate, according to purchasing power parity, well no, this is according to the law of one price. What would happen if, in reality, we see equal to 3? Then the consumer would have two options. He can either, if I have 100 Jamaican dollars, I can do one of two things. I can either buy bananas in Jamaica,
You get 3 of them.
and no, because in Jamaica, 100 Jamaican dollars will get me 100 bananas in Jamaica, right? If I buy bananas in Jamaica, I get 100 bananas, okay? Or I can exchange money, exchange to GQ, and how many would I get if I exchanged these 100 Jamaican dollars into,
Wouldn't it be like 150 bananas?
one second. Yes. I exchanged them into GQ, and let's see. So for every dollar, I get 2 GQ, right? So I exchanged 200 GQ, and for 200.
Well, no, because you're that rate with the 3. We're talking about 3 now, so you actually get 3.
Yes. Thank you. Exactly. Yes, I get 300 GQ. So with 300 GQ, I can buy 150 bananas.
But that's still with the same 100 Jamaicans.
Yes, with 100 Jamaican dollars.
So you're talking about a difference of exchange rate between companies and how the one price for a commodity might differ.
Yes,
100
precisely.
bananas for
So
100.
the law of one price says this cannot
Make it
hold.
100 bananas for, does that say
Okay,
100?
we can do the similar
Jamaican,
analysis
or does that say
with
100?
Jamaican.
with
I know, but
Guatemalan
what is that?
quetzales,
Is that 100?
and we'll see
It
that
looks like
we
it
can
could be
either
100 or
buy
180.
Guatemalan quetzales with 100 Guatemalan quetzales. We could buy. No, sorry. Let me just write it down. If I have 200 Guatemalan quetzales, I can either buy bananas in Guatemala, and for 200 Guatemalan quetzales, I can buy 100 bananas, or I can exchange to JD. I get 66 JD. Let's can do the math. And no, don't trust me. Let's do the math together. So if I have 200 GQ and it's a 3-to-1 ratio, then I'd get 133 JD. Did you guys follow how I got these numbers? Plug it into the exchange. Okay, good. So basically we have 200 GQ, okay? So I have 200 GQ, plug it into my exchange rate here. I know I need GQ on the bottom. So I have, how many JD is that? So for every 1 JD, I get 3 GQ. Because for every one JD, I get 3 GQ. Either right or so that gives me 133 JD. Okay? So I can either buy the bananas in Guatemala and get 100 of them, or I can exchange to Jamaican dollars, go buy the bananas in Jamaica, and I'd only be able to get 66 bananas.
On that sentence right above it, it says buy B. and
Bananas.
Yeah, I mean, I know.
Sorry.
I'm saying buy B.
NG, Guatemala.
NG.
Mm-hmm. So I can either buy the bananas in Guatemala and get 100 of them, or I can exchange to Jamaican dollars, then go to Jamaica and buy them, and I'd only be able to get 66. So nobody would do that. Everybody would do this. So the suppliers, the banana suppliers in Guatemala are going to increase their prices of bananas. The banana suppliers in Jamaica are going to lower their prices of bananas until these numbers converge. And that is, again, purchasing power parity. All the law of one price says is that we cannot find this scenario.
What is the next sentence under the same in 132?
Exchange 133 Jamaican dollars. Exchange to 133 Jamaican dollars. Yes, sir.
Isn't that exchange rate, wouldn't that give you because 200 times 1 divided by 3 would give you 66.66. So how would it come out?
Yeah, you're right. I totally apologize. It would be 66.
Okay.
Just like the other side.
Yeah, the numbers work out to 66 bananas, but
Okay.
thank you, good catch. Because in Jamaica, a banana's $1. Or okay. So again, the math, you guys can do the math, that part.
So does that say 1 JD over 3 GD times minus 66?
Equals.
Good catch. Okay. Law of one price. Make sense? Okay, let's go over what affects exchange rates. This is kind of important.
Can you give a second before you erase all that?
Sure. I'll start erasing the top. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I can get a copy now.
I can't see why. Thank you.
Sure. I think that the homework will give you a chance to practice these concepts. So that's why I encourage you, even if you have all the grades you want on the homework, still try to do both homework sets. Okay. So just real quick, what are some obvious reasons why the law of one price is a very simplistic way of looking at it?
Somebody will always try and find a way to make more money out of buying something somewhere else cheaper and selling it somewhere else?
Yes, so that is the law of one price. So the law of one price will say that the law of one price combined with purchasing power parity will say that because somebody will always try to make money, then this scenario, you won't be able to find this, in the long run. This will happen quickly, the arbitrage orders will swarm in, but what are we missing? What crucial fundamental piece are we missing to this? We've oversimplified our process, our problem significantly in our former analysis. We said that a Jamaican can just buy bananas in Guatemala and consume them in Jamaica, or move to Guatemala. Yes.
Is there costs for the exchange?
Yes, there are transaction costs. Yep. So the Jamaican would have to get on his little banana boat and float across to Guatemala. And what's that?
No, with the Cubans.
And float across to Guatemala and purchase the bananas there. And the Guatemalan would have to, do however Guatemalans get across to Jamaica. And so that's just one example of one exchange rate. Perhaps they could get on a plane like Americans and everyone else.
How far is it from Jamaica to Guatemala?
I don't know, Caribbean to West South America.
I don't.
I can't tell you in miles. Probably 3 or 4 time zones. Basically the width of the U.S. I don't know about that. So, yes, so transaction costs were definitely overlooked. As Ruben pointed out last class, exchange rate costs have been overlooked. The other thing that we didn't think about is whether these commodities are homogeneous. Whether Jamaican bananas taste as good as Guatemalan bananas. If not, then maybe a consumer would rationally have preference for one over the other, and that would discount things accordingly. Yes, so these are some other things to think about, and in the homework you have a problem where you're asked to think about one of those things. 807 miles?
Yeah, 807 miles.
As the crow flies?
Swimming distance.
2 hours? 2 hours.
2 hours.
Oh, yeah. I think like 20 hours to go over.
Really? I see the map. We're going pretty. Oh, what? I was thinking Ecuador. Yeah.
You said for Western South America.
Yeah, that's exactly. All right, good thing that won't be tested. Okay, so what causes exchange rates to move? All right, just going to write down a few factors here, and we'll look at these one by one. So, relative price levels. I can never spell the word relative right, so if you guys know I'm spelling it wrong, let me know.
You're good.
Okay. Trade barriers, cultural preferences, and productivity. As the book defines it, but really productivity just gets back to relative price levels. And the way I want you guys to analyze this stuff, if you read the book section, the book, I think, waits to the very end before casually dropping this line. But basically, think about what movements in each of these will do to local demand. We want to focus on local demand. Okay? So you always have the choice of buying local or buying foreign. So think about what's going to happen to local demand. So relative price levels. If the price locally were to increase and the price in the foreign market stays the same. So think about it from a Russian's perspective in the previous example. What's going to happen to local demand? We didn't really decrease. Yes, demand. So prices increase, demand decreases. Econ 101, right? When demand decreases, when demand decreases, supply increases. Supply's got to decrease too. So, if demand were to decrease, downward slope in demand shifts here, then quantity supply decreases too. No problem. This won't be. But you got to stop. So, if you want it less, if you want to buy the stuff less from your economy, right? That means you're willing to pay less for the product domestically. Then you want the other good more, and the other currency becomes more valuable. Okay, does that make sense? So when the domestic price increases, right? So relative price level, so dome price increases, then demand, domestic demand, we'll say, decreases, then the exchange rate of foreign currency to local currency decreases. Because you can now buy more in the foreign currency. You want to buy more in the foreign currency. See if I can think of a more intuitive way to explain.
Oh, I can't read your writing. What does that say? Something?
Domestic price increases, okay. Domestic demand decreases, the ratio of the foreign currency to local currency decreases, okay? Think about it this way, right? Think about, we have corn, okay? We used to be able to buy 100, ears of corn for $10, okay? But because the local price levels increased, we can now buy less corn for $10, okay? So now we can only buy 50 ears of corn for $10, okay? And the exchange rate to Thai baht was 20 Thai baht to $1. Okay? So we used to be able to buy 100 ears of corn for $10, and if purchasing power parity held, then we used to be able to buy 100 ears of corn for 200 Thai baht. Do you guys see where I'm getting this number from? Because every dollar was worth 20 Thai baht. Okay? So now the prices, local prices increased. So now we can only buy 50 ears of corn for $10. But we can still buy 100 ears of corn for 200 Thai baht. So if you think about it in terms of real exchange rate, the real exchange rate between the real exchange rate was 1-to-1 under the old regime, because you could buy 100 ears of corn for $10. You multiply 110, you multiply that by 20-to-1, and that gives you yeah, it is 200. No, never mind, that's right. 200 baht. Sorry, I guess I can't work later. That was under the old exchange rate. Right now, you can only buy 50 ears of corn for $10. If the exchange rate is the same, then it's 100 baht should be able to get you 50 ears of corn. Sorry guys, I'm having a mind fart. That's not a professional thing to say.
I think you basically just wanted to compare the two pricings in terms of the real exchange rate, which then you just take the $200 to the 50 in the second example, which would only be 1/2, correct? In terms of exchange rate, because right now it's 1-to-1, because 100 ears of corn for
Yes.
$10 would equal 100 ears of corn for 200 baht.
Yes.
But then if the U.S. economy changed it to 50 ears of corn for $10, it should, and still 200, it's 1-to-2.
So this is the real exchange rate.
Yes. I'll be here all week, guys.
Thank you. Good save. Okay? So basically what's happening is if the real exchange rate moves one way, then purchasing power parity and law of one price says that exchange rates have to counteract that and have to sort of change. So, all right. Let's return to this problem. Let's think about trade barriers. Let's just think about, let's simplify the problem here. And, oh wait, yes, sorry, go ahead. 1-to-2. We'll get back to this, okay? Just think about it in terms of, is the foreign good more lucrative or is the domestic good more lucrative, okay? And we'll figure out what that does to the foreign exchange rates a little later, okay? So, what's that? So, if we introduce trade barriers, then if, say, we increase tariffs, so every time we buy something from Jamaica products, then what's that going to do to demand of local goods? Is that going to make our goods more lucrative or less lucrative?
Increase if you only had between that and Jamaica, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, if that's the only, you're right. So this increases demand for local goods. So increase local demand. What that does is it increases local prices. And what has to happen in the exchange rates to counteract this increase of local prices is the exchange rate has to increase. So we can now buy
more exports with less American dollars.
No, we can buy less exports with the same amount of American dollars because tariffs have increased.
Well, they said in order to adjust,
yes. So exchange rates would increase so that you can buy the same amount of exports with U.S. dollars to counteract that. Yes, sir?
Eventually, would this cause a recession?
If we just sort of isolate our bubbles to this being the only impact, so yes. But I mean, foreign exchange isn't usually what causes the recessions. If trade barriers were really high, that probably wouldn't cause anyone a recession. If price levels skyrocketed, that might lead to a recession.
So trade barriers would go up, so prices would go up, and then that would...
Local price, so if trade barriers go up, local prices go up. Yeah.
Eventually.
I can see how that would lead to a recession. But I mean, that's basically inflation, right?
And that second part right there where it says foreign counteract the tariffs going up, correct?
Yes.
So that's the counteract portion of it.
Yes. So, cultural preferences. If we want domestic, for instance, think about cars. If we have a really big buy domestic push. So again, if we increase domestic demand, we increase local prices, and so this ratio moves in the same direction. And finally, local productivity, you can think of as what productivity does is it just reduces price levels. If you have an increase in productivity, that's just basically going to mean you can buy more of your goods for the same amount of money because it's cheaper to produce these goods. Okay?
Which would be the same thing as the top one.
Yes, it'll be the same thing as the top one. The book listed out is
And that right side is always for what happens to compensate for.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, well, if product, but if you increase local demand, if we want more Buy American, then that's going to increase exchange rates. Again, increase exchange rates might be misleading. It's going to increase the amount of foreign currency you can buy with $1 to counteract that. So, I'm going to give you a nice little handy graph or chart to remember this stuff. And I'm going to give you a promise that...
Don't erase it yet, sir.
Oh, sorry. Next class period, I'm going to give you a better explanation. I apologize. I don't have a better one prepared today.
And that's not this Thursday, right?
No, that's not this Thursday. That's either I'll take a couple minutes out of your time on Tuesday after class, because well, we'll see. But I'll have some prepared minutes. Okay, so we have these different factors, and a change in these factors. We're going to first think about what it does to local demand, and then we're going to figure out what it does to the ratio. Okay, so if domestic prices or trade barriers or imports demand or export demand, if more people want your goods or productivity, if any of these factors were to increase, so if domestic prices increase, what does that do to local demand? How much are you going to want to buy? Yes. You're going to want to buy less from the U.S. If trade barriers increase, if there's more tariffs, yes, you're going to want to buy more domestically because it's going to cost you more to buy abroad. If import demand increases, so if Jamaican bananas taste better than Guatemalan bananas, what are Guatemalans going to want to buy, more or less of their own bananas?
Demand decreases for local.
Yes, local demand is going to decrease. If more Guatemalans want to buy Jamaican bananas, then what's going to happen to Guatemalan demand? Is it going to increase or decrease?
For Guatemalan bananas?
Sorry. So if we're in
Guatemala.
If we're Guatemala and more people want to buy our bananas, what's going to happen to our demand?
Bananas prices are going to increase, which means local demand will decrease.
No, if more people want to buy our bananas, the demand for our good is going to increase.
I thought you said over there that if demand increases, usually that typically says that price will increase, and then demand for...
Depends on which country you're thinking of, okay? So over there, we were talking about cultural preferences. We were talking about if demand for exports increase. So, or if I'm the U.S., think about it this way. We were talking about cars, right? So if I'm the U.S. and we have a big buy local push, that means we are increasing our own demand, all right? If I'm the U.S. and China says, hey, let's buy more American cars, then export demand is going to increase, right? But our local demand is also going to increase. There's going to be more of U.S. cars demanded. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I think I missed this. What is A?
This should be delta for change.
Okay.
Sorry.
A is for apple.
Apples.
Yeah, I found it down.
Okay. So if more people want our products, export demand increases, the change is positive, then the demand for local products is going to increase. demand for our products. Okay, and finally, if we have an increase in productivity, we're able to produce more efficiently. That's also going to increase our local demand. Okay? And what's that going to do to this ratio of foreign currency to local currency? Again, I will give you guys better explanations next time, I promise. But for now, please excuse my not fully preparedness or having a mind fartedness, and just remember these directions. So it's always going to move in the same direction as the local demand. What's that, Jeff?
So that was you having a mind fartedness.
Mind fartedness, yeah. That's it. You can look it up on the website.
No, I thought you said productivity was the same as the domestic relative price level.
So if productivity increases, what happens to domestic prices?
It would decrease.
They will decrease. Here we're looking at what happens if domestic prices increase. So if domestic prices decrease, the arrow moves the other way. Same way that productivity moves. So I'm just doing it, I mean, you can do whatever kind of sensitivity analysis you want. I wanted the change to all be positive. You can do the local demand is always positive and figure out which way it would have to change for the local demand to be positive, if you prefer that. So we're just dealing with increases in all these. Okay. I want to point out that you can see all this stuff on a supply and demand graph where you do the exchange rate, foreign to domestic, and here you have quantity, local currency. Oh, wait a second. It's coming back. Okay. Think about how much of your currency will be demanded. That's the way we got to think about this. Okay? So if domestic prices increase globally, how many people are going to want your currency? More or less?
More.
If domestic prices increase, less people are going to want your currency because they're going to be able to buy less stuff in your country. Yes, those foreign people would want to buy local, yep. But they want to buy less from us, okay? If export demand increases, right? So more people want to buy American cars, and we're America. Then the quantity demanded of American dollars is going to increase, okay? They're going to want more U.S. dollars. And so...
Which means the dollar is stronger.
Yes, so the value of the dollar is going to...
Depend on how many people want.
Yes, the value of the dollar is going to appreciate. More people want our currency, so the value of our dollar is going to appreciate. Okay? That is the way to think about this, and so if we're looking at foreign over local, right? Let's just take domestic prices here. So we have domestic prices increase, then quantity demanded is going to decrease. So it used to be the case that 50 rubles would buy you $5 worth of goods. But because domestic prices increased, 50 rubles can now only buy you $3 worth of goods. So to counterbalance that, what we're going to get is the exchange rate is going to go down. So that's going to push this down until 50 rubles can buy you closer to this again. Or the real exchange rate will be the same. Again, I'll come with a better explanation next time. I apologize.
So when it comes to the currency, the exchange rate, can you safely assume then because like you said, it depends on the amount of people that want like our goods.
Mm-hmm.
So would it relate to gross domestic product per country? So our gross domestic product compared to somebody else's?
So if our, for instance, if our domestic prices increased, that's going to arbitrarily inflate our gross domestic product, right? Because we're just valuing our stuff more. So it would be a difficult comparison to make.
Arbitrary variables?
They're based on what?
The exchange rate is based off of like exchangeable variables like that, or is that what it's?
I mean, in theory, exchange rate should be based on the law of one price and purchasing power parity. Is if I can go to Jamaica and buy something for much cheaper than I can buy it here, then I'll do that. And so that'll push up the value of the Jamaican dollar until it reaches equilibrium again. Yes?
Can you do that?
Oh, yes. So whichever one of these domestic prices, right? So if domestic prices were to increase, quantity of local currency demanded is going to decrease, right? And so the foreign over domestic is going to find a new equilibrium. So let's go, this was QM1, and this is now QM2, okay? The ratio of foreign over domestic is going to decrease. Okay, so the axes on this graph here are the ratio of foreign dollars versus domestic dollars, and the x-axis is quantity of local currency demand. So you should think, or quantity of local currency, yeah. You should think of how these affect local demand. And that'll tell you which way to push this demand graph. We haven't really dealt with supply. The book doesn't really deal with supply, holds supply constant. In reality, the amount of money you print is going to change the supply of local dollars. Okay, am I free to erase here? We are almost done with our exchange rates unit. I will give you a better explanation of this stuff. I will be generous when testing on it because of my inability to explain it correctly. And I encourage you to look at the homework. The homework doesn't deal with this stuff at all. It's more scoped to stuff I think you should know. But I'm just interested in you guys understanding how these factors affect demand for local currency right now. And next time I'll explain to you guys how they affect the exchange rates more thoroughly, mechanically. With the last 15 minutes, I thought I'd give you guys an option. There is a really cool 15 minutes TED Talk about behavioral finance that sort of sheds light on the recent financial crisis and moreover exposes you to a really cool field. Anyone who wants to leave can leave. I'm just going to show you guys this video. And anyone that wants to stay, I'd be glad.
Probably got to move that board.
What's that?
Probably.
Yeah, I'll move the board.
No, keep doing it.
Is anyone that, okay, there we go. And then there's a button here that helps my TV get on there. So computer. There we go. You get it. Let's go to.
It's final exams week, and that means two things.
Sorry about that.
The library is packed.
And I'll be writing papers.
So this is going to be in lieu of me giving you guys an intro to the financial crisis, because you guys will give me an intro to the financial crisis. And I move these.
This is about say a little bit about predictable irrationality. And my interest in irrational behavior started many years ago in hospital.
Can you guys hear this?
I was burned very badly. And if you spend a lot of time in hospital, you'll see a lot of types of irrationalities. And the one that particularly bothered me in the burn department was the process by which the nurses took the bandage off me. Now, you must have all taken a Band-Aid off at some point, and you must have wondered what's the right approach. Do you rip it off quickly, short duration but high intensity, or do you take your Band-Aid off slowly? You take a long time, but each second is not as painful. Which one of those is the right approach? The nurses in my department thought that the right approach was the ripping one. So they would grab hold and they would rip, and they would grab hold and they would rip. And because I had 70% of my body burned, it would take about an hour. And as you can imagine, I hated that moment of ripping with incredible intensity. Now we tried to reason with them and say, why don't we try something else? Why don't we take a little longer, maybe 2 hours instead of an hour, and have less of this intensity? And the nurses told me two things. They told me that they had the right model of the patient, that they knew what was the right thing to do to minimize my pain. And they also told me that the word patient doesn't mean to make suggestions or interfere. Or this is not just in Hebrew, by the way, it's in every language I've had experience with so far. And you know, there wasn't much I could do, and they kept on doing what they were doing. And about 3 years later, when I left the hospital, I started studying at the university. And one of the most interesting lessons I learned was that there is an experimental method, that if you have a question, you can create a replica of this question in some abstract way, and you can try to examine this question and maybe learn something about the world. So that's what I did. I was still interested in this question of how do you take bandages of burn patients. So originally I didn't have much money, so I went to a hardware store and I bought a carpenter's vise, and I would bring people to the lab and I would put their finger in it and I would crunch it a little bit. And I would crunch it for long periods and short periods, and pain went up and when it went down, and with breaks and without breaks, all kinds of versions of pain. And when I finished hurting people a little bit, I would ask them, so how painful was this? Or how painful was this? Or if you had to choose between the last two, which one would you choose? I kept on doing this for a while. And then, like all good academic projects, I got more funding. I moved to sounds, electrical shocks. I even had a pain suit that I could get people to feel much more pain. But at the end of this process, what I learned was that the nurses were wrong. Here were wonderful people with good intentions and plenty of experience, and nevertheless they were getting things wrong predictably all the time. It turns out that because we don't encode duration in the way that we encode intensity, I would have had less pain if the duration would have been longer and the intensity was lower. It turns out it would have been better to start with my face, which was much more painful, and move toward my legs, giving me a trend of improvement over time that would have been also less painful. And it also turns out it would have been good to give me breaks in the middle to kind of recuperate from the pain. All of these would have been great things to do, and my nurses had no idea. And from that point on, I started thinking, are the nurses the only people in the world who get things wrong in this particular decision, or is it a more general case? And it turns out it's a more general case. There's a lot of mistakes we do. And I want to give you one example of one of these irrationalities, and I want to talk to you about cheating. And the reason I picked cheating is because it's interesting, but also it tells us something, I think, about the stock market situation we're in. So my interest in cheating started when Enron came on the scene, exploded all of a sudden, and I started thinking about what is happening here. Is it the case that there is kind of a few apples who are capable of doing these things, or are we talking a more endemic situation that many people are actually capable